All right.
We're good? Okay, right.
Good evening, everybody. Today is right now is the Ward 7 Town Hall meeting. We'll be discussing whether we should have outdoor dining as well as easing the height on about 19 homes on the south side of Garrett Avenue, 5 feet. This has been in my newsletter. This has been discussed at board meetings for the past 2 years, but per a bunch of the commissioners' requests, one final town hall they wanted, as well as just to talk about it, and then we have the ordinance right there where we can discuss that. So it should be pretty straightforward. Unfortunately, there are only 3 people. We have 1 person on Zoom and 2 people in the audience. Actually, we got 3 people. Another straggler, 3 people in the audience. So what I would like to do is just open it up to public comment first, as well as if you have any questions to ask our solicitor, as well John Rice, as well as our codes enforcer, Kevin Kachansky. That's something we could do. But before I start, I just want to say thank you to Ian, who's walking by, Kevin, John, Molly Gallagher for putting this stuff, putting all the information up online. I know Ian helped me out with the robocall and texting, and I put it on Nextdoor and my social media, so I think that's great. This is a Zoom town hall, so you can call in if you don't have the internet. And there was a snail mail sent with that information. You can Zoom in and you can be here. So I think that's wonderful. And finally, to the people in the audience, whether you agree or disagree, I am happy that you're here, happy that we're talking about this, and happy for the transparency. So with that being said, Sarah, if you want to go first. Kim, do you want to go next?
Good evening. I just want to give a little bit of the history of Garrett Avenue, because I know it. The people who worked in the Garrett Hill Coalition know it. Garrett Hill is old. It began the first development as the development was Dr. Garrett after the Civil War.
Sean, can you ever come to the mic, because I can't hear her?
Okay, sure. Sarah?
So Garrett Hill was developed shortly after the end of the Civil War by Dr. Garrett. And it was a residential district, but is in many districts at that time. Some mom and pop stores developed on the lower half of Garrett Avenue. I'm going to say, I don't even like to use the term below the bridge, south of the bridge. And actually, when I moved here in 1982, there was still a barber pole, and there was still what had been an ice cream store. So in 1968, when commercial zoning first came to Radnor, they saw the mom and pop stores in addition to what was down on Conestoga Road, and they said, oh, it's commercial. The issue with making it commercial, which they did, was that it means residential is illegal. So the people who wanted to fix up their houses could not fix up their houses because it was zoned commercial. And the area began to get slightly down at the heels. It was accelerated after Villanova began to expand and undergrads had been living at Radnor House. And when I moved in here in 1982, you could not park anywhere because the freshmen who had to live on campus had their cars on Radnor House, and undergrads were living in Radnor House. That ended one night when the students had a beer party with kegs of beer in the elevators going up and down the floors, and the little old ladies at Radnor House didn't like it. So the students had to go someplace. And because the houses weren't very expensive and they had not been able to be fixed up, they began to move into the lower half of Garrett Avenue. We had them in the upper half of Garrett Avenue, but not to the extreme, because there were many absentee landlords who bought those houses. It was a good buy. So the piece that the Garrett Hill Coalition and the ordinances we developed, and I was not on the committee, I was a researcher for them, was to allow people who lived there to have the freedom to fix up their houses. And there have been, since that was passed in 2009, there have been 9 houses, either new houses built or rehabs, extensive rehabs. The neighborhood has come up. I think there's absolutely no difference between the height on the one side and the height on the other. Most of the houses, I live at 29 on the upper side. My house isn't 35 feet tall. Because the other piece that people need to understand is when the people built those houses, they built them with 2 factors in mind. One, how much money they had, because I doubt that they would have qualified for a mortgage. Don't even know whether there were mortgages in the 20s. And B, they built to their needs. How many bedrooms do we need? How many closets do we need? It was very, very basic. So I just think that's important for people to know the history of the building of it. It's not institutional racism. It's not that anybody has one side of the end of the street is better than the other set. It's just the way zoning came in, because residential zoning did not come in until 1974. And this is a community that was built during the 20s, 19s to the 20s. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Kim, do you want to speak? Kim Cruz?
Who's in the room? Because we can't see who's in the room. I know
hold
Sarah
on.
because I heard her, but.
Ian, if you could readjust the camera. So yeah, as far as the names go, I don't, if Ian can switch the camera. Is Ian, or is, but Kim, would you like to speak in the meantime? Do you have anything
Yeah, I
to
actually
say?
have a question for Kevin. It was a comment that he made during the Board of Commissioners meeting. He said something about Garrett Avenue being a buffer to the houses on the other side of the street, and I didn't understand what he meant. So if he could explain that, appreciate it.
Sure. I was referring to the set of single-family attached or student homes. I think it's 142 to 146 Garrett Avenue. That Garrett Avenue serves as a buffer from the outdoor dining.
Can't hear him.
Sorry about that. Is that better, Kim?
Yep, thank you.
So it was in reference to the location of outdoor dining that would be at the Ale House, the Garrett Avenue serving as a buffer to those single-family homes that are across the street, the single-family attached homes, 142 to 146 range, the student homes that are right across the street.
And is the road always considered a buffer?
In
I
this
didn't
case,
understand that.
well, this case, the buffer setback is from single-family detached, but Garrett Avenue is serving as a buffer, and I believe that there are instances in the outdoor dining ordinance that's applicable in the rest of the township that recognizes streets as buffers in certain instances.
Okay. And so on the other side of Conestoga, so behind the behind Flips, there would be no setbacks because there's no single family dwellings back there? Is
Those
that right?
behind Flips, I believe, the parking areas are in a different district. They're not in the Conestoga Road, Garrett Hill district, and it's more than 50 feet regardless of that. So outdoor dining could not be located in those 2 lots that are currently being used for parking. It's in a different district, first off. And second, then those single-family attached homes are further back than the 50-foot regardless.
Okay, so the only place that Flips can have outdoor dining is right there on the side where they currently have it?
I believe there's part of, and I don't have a site plan, I don't think we've been
That's all right.
provided a site plan, so I can't comment as to where they would locate it. But outdoor dining would only be permitted in the Conestoga Road District. So wherever
Okay.
that would encompass their lot and they would have space, that would be up for a possible location.
Okay. And, okay, so just so I'm perfectly clear on this one, because I live on Garrett Avenue, and putting a student rental above other attached family dwellings does not sit well with me. So the reason why you didn't include it, all of the dwellings, is because from what I understood from the meeting, it was because it would make it basically a moot point to do this amendment.
I don't think I understood you correctly when you talked about student housing above, I don't,
So the only dwelling on Garrett Avenue or in that Conestoga area that this new amendment would apply to or would actually take into consideration is one single dwelling, and it happens to be a student rental. And so my issue is that none of the other surrounding dwellings, which are non-student rentals, were taken into consideration.
where at? I'm not familiar with any adjacent dwellings that are not student rentals along Garrett Avenue. Those across the street are student. Behind is
That's
a
right.
single-family detached unit as well.
And that's a student rental. Okay, so I think what I'm understanding. Okay. Okay. So the issue is that so right behind Flips, where the two parking lots are, that's not in the Garrett Hill overlay.
I believe that is R5 district.
Okay. And there can't be outdoor dining there.
Correct. It's only applicable, the outdoor dining area has to be located in the Garrett Hill Conestoga Road District.
Okay. And so the setback doesn't apply to property lines that are outside of the Garrett Hill overlay district?
It's to the dwelling unit. The outdoor dining
So
area to the physical dwelling unit itself.
Okay. But it still wouldn't apply to it wouldn't apply to the ones that are outside in the R5?
I believe the R5 are further than 50 feet, considering you have a 20-foot parking stall depth, the drive aisle, and then another parking stall depth. You're probably closer to 60-plus feet minimum in the R5 district before you get to the single homes back behind.
Okay. And why wasn't the number of seats inside reduced by the number of outside seats that they could have for outdoor dining, like Angie was suggesting during the DOC meeting?
I don't know. We formatted this with the same provisions that apply to the rest of Radnor. So you get a percentage of the indoor seats outdoor, as well as then for parking, the first 12 seats don't require parking. So that's the same structure. We kept the same structure as it is in the rest of Radnor.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep, sure.
Is there anybody up on Zoom that would like to speak? If you could put your hand, the hand wave, I'll unmute you. Okay, while that's happening, is there anyone from the audience that would like to speak? Okay, come on up.
First of all, I want to thank Sean and the staff for all their efforts in making this meeting possible tonight. I know I have been persistent about doing this, but I also believe civic participation is important in decisions such as this. I have a series of questions to ask, and I don't know if Kevin wants to come up here and answer them, or if the person who I'm asking him to. For example, I wanted to ask, I know one of the things that you mentioned, Kevin, was that there are other places besides the current places, which are Flip and Bailey and the Ale House, that could potentially add outdoor eating under this proposal. Do you remember how many places there were? You can just hold up your fingers and I can say it.
I don't. So, Kevin, if you can for transparency, if you can come up and ask so the people at home can hear, and this is not a one-way conversation.
I don't recall without looking at a specific map of the properties that could be applicable to. We looked at Flippin' Bailey's and the Ale House primarily.
At a public meeting, you said 3 or 4, you believed, and as I count that, that could be, if there were 12 additional seats at each of 3 or 4 places, that could compute to well over 20 parking places, or if people come singularly, 30 or 40 parking places that people would need to eat in an outdoor restaurant. Does that sound reasonable?
Again, without seeing a site plan for a specific outdoor dining area at an establishment, I believe there are 4 restaurants, I think currently, along that Conestoga Road stretch that this would be applicable to. How much, and in terms of they can fit, how much they would want, how many indoor seats they have and would be allowed outdoor with the rest of the regulations, I can't comment as to how much density each one of those establishments could get.
My question is particularly in terms of the amount of parking that would be needed in an area where we already are in a crunch for parking. We have many places, as you know, that have posted private parking for this business only or for this rental unit only, and so it's very difficult for people who live in the neighborhood to have parking. And would consideration be given, for example, for all of Garrett Avenue, perhaps to have permit parking? Would that be something that could be considered?
You bring up a very valid point about the parking. That issue was discussed at length at the Planning Commission meeting, and the Planning Commission members, several of them spoke up in favor of the outdoor dining, and that, you know, in their opinion, this would be a walk-to amenity and not something that would be a destination that people would be driving to. So that point exactly was raised during the discussion at Planning Commission, and Planning Commission ultimately voted in favor of this, in I think large part due to the position of several members that this would be a more walk-up amenity versus a drive-to amenity.
I understand that, but it's also been my experience that we have people parking on Dreer and further down Williams and walk up to the restaurants to avoid being perhaps questioned when they leave by car in a position where they might be considered to have alcohol content above that which would be safe for driving. So we have many people in our neighborhoods who have additional cars in their area and then walk up to the restaurant. And I know that's not something you would know about, Kevin, but that's something that some of us know about who live in that community. I believe what Kim mentioned is that there would be no buffer between the back of Flippin' Bailey's where the parking is and the twin houses that are located there. Is that correct?
There's a separation. There's not a buffer, physical planted buffer that is required in outdoor dining anywhere. There's a physical separation that those parking areas create between the residential uses and any outdoor dining that might be proposed on the Flippin' Bailey's parcel. But again, without a site plan, I have not seen where the owners would want to or even propose to put something on their parcel.
The reason for that is there has been a twin house for sale there for probably almost 3 months that has not moved. And I was wondering if its location would have an impact on that, and I'm sure you don't know. But I also realize from having walked up and down that street that often there is a truck that parks back there with the bumper overlapping the sidewalk, which is the main entrance into that house, which I'm sure would not be an attractive entrance for someone who was interested in buying it.
On something like that, I would recommend contacting our police department. Blocking of sidewalks is something that is not permitted, and they can deal with that issue, similar with your assertion that people may be at a alcoholic level that is not safe for driving, that's something that our police department would need to be aware of and enforce. So I would recommend, if you observe any of those, that you contact the police.
Thank you. I appreciate your suggestion, and I will do so in the future. The other thing I have a question about is the entrance and access on our roads that are very narrow. As you know, you've seen that. I'm sure Garrett is very narrow. And there are also sometimes, in addition to the usual trash trucks and school buses on the street, I've observed more trailer trucks on the street, and recently there have even been trailer trucks going down Williams and around Wentworth, and they have to back and forth to make those turns, which is very precarious. And I was wondering if there would, how I would go about having the police perhaps, or the safety or traffic staff look at some of those issues with the larger trucks coming into our neighborhood.
I would recommend reaching out to Superintendent of Police Chris Flanagan and possibly attending a traffic safety meeting.
And that's on Thursday mornings, but it's usually closed, or is that another one? Okay. Thank you. I know some of the meetings are not open to the public. Okay, thank you. It's just not recorded, is that right, Sean?
It is not recorded.
Okay, that's good to know.
So staff traffic is not, to my knowledge, is not recorded. It's once a month at like 10 o'clock on like Wednesday or Thursday. If there's an issue that you want discussed, I would reach out to Superintendent Flanagan or Sergeant Mark Stanson and see if you could put whatever topic you want on that staff traffic agenda. I would give them a month or two leeway or lead time so they can get some information if it's a traffic counter or whatever kind of data that they get. I would like to just really touch one point. So I have to say that I'm confused. So on one hand, you're worried that parking is going to be difficult on Garrett and Williams, but on the other hand, you're saying that they park on Dreer, which would lead Williams or Garrett having less cars. But I guess my biggest concern or kind of question mark is, so when it comes to flips, like they don't really use the upstairs. I know that Antonella's tried outdoor dining. They put stools and they're not going to do it. Conestoga, he won't do it. And some of those restaurants are so Antonella's closes really at 7. So it's not really like people are going to go there. It's not like a destination where you sit and eat outside. And as I said before, we don't tow in Garrett Hill. I mean, we don't have meters. We don't ticket. Yes, there's some on Garrett Avenue. Yes, and part of the parking concerns is because of the maximum setback issue, and some of the student housing. And I will say this, I firmly believe that if you make everything uniform and you give, and I'm not saying that I'm happy with what Brasso did, I don't think what he did was good, but you allow some homes to be re-gentrified, for lack of a better term. That house that Brasso built, which was too tall, fine, I get that, but you're not going to rent that to 6 college kids. You're going to put a family in there. Families have a lot less cars than college students, where you can put 3 college students in a house. Is that correct? Is that the maximum? 2? So 2, often 3. And then, yes, sometimes they do 3, trust me. I've had calls with Kevin where there's at least 3. And then their boyfriends and girlfriends sleep over, and you have 6 cars in the neighborhood. So I think that getting rid of some of these hurdles would help parking, and it would help parking for everybody. So there's no silver bullet, as you taught me. When you fix one problem, you're probably going to have another. But I firmly believe that we need to support our business district, support the businesses that support the township and the community. And I think that we tried the overlay. We tried it for 10 years plus, and I just don't see the benefit to it. And I've been contacted, I have emails right there, contacted by members who live in the overlay, who live in that restricted part, and they want that changed. They did not sign up for it. And every one of these town hall meetings that we have had, not one person has come out not one person that lives in the overlay said, hey, keep these restrictions on, and the people that are saying keep the restrictions on don't live in the overlay. And for me, if you have a house in that restricted part of the overlay, you have the most say. I'm not going to tell Kevin right here or you what you should do with your house, and vice versa. I just think that it's beyond respect, but it creates a lot of things that can be perceived as inequitable. And that's kind of why I'm here. That's why the neighbors that live in the restricted part of the overlay have asked me to make this change. So with that said, would you have a follow-up comment, Roberta?
I have no question.
Okay, great.
I'm going to continue with some of the outdoor dining questions. And we're really fortunate, and I see some of them here tonight. We have very considerate restaurant owners in our neighborhood, and they were eager to voluntarily agree to modify the requirements, say they will have no music in their establishment, so they wouldn't increase the capacity and so forth. And if they would, what assurances do we have if there were any such informal agreements that they might continue if their properties were sold? For
I
exa-
can't comment on an informal agreement. Whatever the code allows is what a business owner, property owner is entitled to do.
So for the people who may not know, do you happen to have a copy of the requirements to go with outdoor dining in the Wayne area? Because that's not really part of what we see when we read the proposal.
I may have a copy.
Because I think it's important that people in the neighborhood understand the, what would come with the agreement to this proposal in terms of what would be allowed in outdoor dining.
I don't, is there a question with that? I don't know, I mean, I have the ordinance regulations, but, I mean, they're available online or,
Right, I have. But
Okay.
could you just,
there's 6 pages on,
all right.
go through.
Why don't you begin with the seating question, because that's always a question. That's on
What's the question?
7. Just could you read what it says, how many parking places there should be?
For the first 12 seats, no parking is required. Seats 13 to 24, 1 space for every 4 seats after the first 12. Number of seats 25 through 50, 1 space for 3 seats after the first 24 seats. There are no additional seats beyond, outdoor dining seats beyond 50. 50 is the cap. And that is based off of a 25% number of indoor seats.
And so, if you look on the website, you'll see there are things like, no advertising on the umbrellas, and tents could be permitted, although we did have some problems with the tents and the winds, which I'm sure the owners will recognize. They could use flower pots or the ornamental containers, am I correct?
Outdoor dining would need to be approved through our design review board. So we would look at the specific proposal that is submitted and comment on it from there.
And there could be outdoor heaters, I believe, when the weather was such?
Sure.
Okay. And they would have to have certain shut-off valves and so forth.
There's code requirements in the building codes that regulate all of that.
And there would also be a way that the materials, for example, should be stored, for example, the furniture and so forth like that. And all the applications would be filed with the township, and I know you're very good at reviewing all those things along with the design review board. What about music and noise? How does that deal with that, Kevin? That's, I think, on the last page. Here.
Let's just get the section reference. It is, no, there's a specific 280, 115.4 E, subsection 7, noise. Outdoor dining shall be subject to Chapter 200 noise. No amplified music or sound is permitted. All activities, including the playing of music or other forms of entertainment, shall comply with the noise limitations of township ordinances and any other regulatory agencies having jurisdiction as applicable.
As you recall, I'm sure there's a certain time zone with the noise requirements. Am I correct, Kevin?
Construction noise, yes, and our police department responds to noise complaints.
So if there's a problem with noise, we would call the police again, just like we would call the police if there was another problem.
Contact 911, report it as a non-emergency, and an officer will respond.
Now, the other thing, it says all locations, whether it's Flippin' Bailey's or the Ale House or whatever place should perhaps do that, will be subject to periodic inspections. Who would inspect places for violations, Kevin? Can you help the public understand that?
It would depend on the nature of the violation called in. It could be a variety of things. But again,
You want to use the microphone?
it would depend on the violation that is called in.
Roberta, can I just jump in? Sure. Thanks. So, in regards to noise, I would love to address that. I would love to address noise. I'd love to address parking. I would love to address rowdiness, drunken behavior, et cetera. At the last Board of Commissioner meeting, I asked Chris Flanagan, our superintendent, have you had any calls about noise or littering or parking? And he said, to his knowledge, no. And I ask him on a regular basis, and I think Angie, who owns Flippin' Bailey's in the Ale House, would know that as well. So there hasn't been a problem. It's a family restaurant, a family eatery. It's a local eatery. It's your neighborhood restaurant. It's not, they don't serve foie gras where you're coming from miles around to try some exotic food. Not to say that if they had exotic food, it wouldn't be wonderful. I am sure it'd be great. Yeah, I appreciate your questions, but part of me feels like, to a certain extent, like, it's almost like, you're giving Kevin the third degree. I think that Angie's proven to be a very reputable business owner, a very reputable person in the community. And she does wonderful things, like whether it's a 4th of July parade, whether it's a block party, whether someone's house burns down. So I understand that you want to protect certain people, and I respect that, but at the same time, I'm hesitant to look for problems where I don't see there are any yet. So with that said.
I agree 100% with the ability that Angie has helped in terms of providing support for our community in a myriad of ways. However, what I've also learned is ownership does not last forever in a given place. So I always try to look to say, well, this is the way it is today, but what may happen tomorrow if someone who is less compliant moves in? Because I think that's what I've learned. I've seen many places. I'm see Andy sitting here. We know how the community has changed over time.
Let me just talk to that. And you are 100%, Roberta. Kevin has done a great job for our codes. Chris Flanagan has done a great job as our superintendent of the police. And the neighbors do a great job as well. I don't want to take our neighbors. You're here. Members are here. They're a member on Zoom, and myself. I drive up and down there. No one wants to see the neighborhood go down. My fear is that it's been pretty beat up lately with a bunch of vacancies, as well as, and not just in Garrett Hill and Wayne and wherever. Obviously, Garrett Hill is my home. It is personal to me. I do want to see these restaurants and these businesses not thrive, just survive until they can hit a point where they can, really thrive. I mean, I'm a small business owner. Times are tough. No one wants to see a door close and people lose jobs. So that's kind of what I have to say about that.
Thanks, Sean. I think we all care about our community, and we all are concerned about our businesses. And we're very fortunate in Garrett Hill because we have a lot of takeout restaurants who have continued to do very well, and I think that has been one asset that we have in our community that we should not overlook. One of the things I wanted to speak about is I know those who live on Garrett Avenue in the section for which the proposed concerns have been raised believe that they will have some financial advantages to having the height restrictions raised. Is there any data that you have, perhaps, Sean, that would show that this, in fact, that 5-foot difference will make a difference in their property values? Because what I've heard as I've gone through the neighborhood is many of our neighbors have had probably, with the reassessment, $1,000 or more increases in their taxes for their properties. And usually when property values go up in a neighborhood, it affects all of us in terms of our tax base. And I know for some people that's going to be a struggle. Is there some data that would lead you to believe that their assessments will go up if we raise those roofs? That's a question I've heard.
So let me first address your second topic first. My litmus test, me being a Board of Commissioner, I am here, and how I judge myself is, yeah, your property values should increase. Nothing stays the same, nothing stays stagnant. If things stay stagnant, they die. And I look at the Garrett Hill overlay as a part of the community and a street to the state stagnant, and it's time to revamp it. So, yeah, unfortunately, your properties may go up and you may have to pay more taxes, and that's capitalism. I don't know what to say. If you don't want to pay more taxes, then rent. But these are...
Let me just make a comment about that.
Yeah, 'cause...
Zoning, a 5-foot increase isn't going to,
Well, no, I was going to get that.
it isn't going to deal, well, I was in a deposition yesterday with a member of the Board of Assessment, one of the assessors, and he described how properties, taxes go up. They go up when you pull a building permit. Building permits get reported to the county, so any of these homes that get 5 more feet, nothing will happen until somebody pulls a building permit. That goes to the county, they come out, they look at it, your taxes go up. So the zoning itself will do nothing in terms of that. Maybe long-term, and I think Sean probably believes long-term it may, because there may be more building permits. But it's just fresh in my mind because I spent 3 hours with one of the assessors yesterday in a deposition, and he walked through how that happens in this township and anywhere in Delaware County. So it's the building permit, you're improving the property, the county's going to try to pick up that increased value, and your taxes will go up, but not just from the zoning ordinance.
And the second part to that is, do I have actual data? And I don't have an actual number, but you were involved with Brasso's house, 131, 133 Garrett Avenue, and it was detrimental to pull the dormers off. It'd be detrimental to make the roof a little bit smaller so he couldn't get an extra floor, an extra bedroom in there. I mean, houses sell based on price per square foot. Oftentimes, if you have more square footage, then it's worth more. I mean, it's very simplistic, but I'm sure you could talk to a realtor and do the math. What does the average house on Garrett Avenue sell per square foot? $100, $200, $300. Now multiply it by number of square feet per house and also per land. How much do they have per land? And obviously, there are things that are intangible, like what's the status of the roof or the driveway. I mean, it's all a certain formula, but I think that should answer your question there.
I have another question, and I'm not trying to grill Kevin because I think I've asked him most of these questions before. I wanted to ask Kevin, and this is a new question that I came up with. I know you've said approximately 19 houses on Garrett Avenue could raise their height to 35 feet, but there are also limits to how much space that could be on that 35 feet because there's some kind of provision that has to be a certain percentage of the floor below or above, and then there's also whether or not that would allow them to add an additional tenant, perhaps, if they turned it into three apartments.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever commented on the number of homes. I've just said the district at which this amendment would apply to. There are other provisions that limit how much development can occur on a second and third floor that are built into the code. So it's not just simply you get 5 feet and can be guaranteed to expand a footprint. There are other parameters, building coverage, impervious coverage, limitations based off of the size of the floor below. And you wouldn't be able to convert it to a second dwelling unit. That would be a different type of use that I'd have to take a look at the code specifically to see if that was permitted. But that could potentially involve, if you're looking at creating additional dwelling units on a lot, a subdivision land development application.
Now, I checked and double-checked on my walk today, and there are some buildings behind the front row houses along Garrett on the left-hand side that exit out onto Garrett Avenue. There's one double house behind the front rows of houses, and there are at least 2 or 3 garage-type buildings that have residential space above them, at least windows that look like they could be an apartment. Would those houses also be able to build up 35 feet as well as the ones along the street itself?
I believe this ordinance provision only applies to the principal dwelling. If there are outbuildings on those would be considered accessory, and those have different height restrictions to them.
What about the one that's actually a double house? It's not an ancillary building, it's actually 2 houses connected together.
Is it a principal dwelling?
Yes, it is.
Then yes, this ordinance would apply to that if it's in the district.
Okay. So those would be backing up onto each's? Okay, I'm just wanting to ask.
Without seeing specific site plans, it's hard to comment on in specific terms.
Thank you, I understand. I just walk the streets a lot, so I've been looking at them and seeing what exists out there. I think you've answered most of my questions, Kevin. Oh, except for one more. I know at one meeting, the notion of rooftop dining was broached, and I asked you that question as well. So if we put outdoor dining in, and so, for example, some place wouldn't have outdoor dining, but they may be able to have, or they could be eligible for outdoor dining, could they add rooftop dining as well?
Rooftop dining is regulated separately than outdoor dining, and I don't believe rooftop dining, I think, is only permitted in the WBOD district and would not be applicable in Garrett Hill at this point because this amendment does not address rooftop dining as an allowable use in Garrett Hill.
So in order to do rooftop dining, they would have to apply for a special kind of a permit or something?
They would either have to amend the code and do something similar to what is proposed now, or seek a variance to the zoning hearing board.
Now, I've been working with you, Kevin, on land development because I don't understand it too well. If, for example, I wanted to build my house higher or reduce a setback or something, I wouldn't probably go to zoning to do that. How would I get a change so that I could build my house taller if it was not allowed?
Well, everything would start with the site plan, and your design professional preparing a plan in accordance with your needs and wants. Then we always recommend coming in and meeting with staff, either myself or the township engineer, if it's going to involve increasing the footprint, not just vertical. And then we can guide you and do a preliminary review. Otherwise, you can submit the plans through the township formally, and we would review them and either offer comments or issue the permits.
So basically, I would have to get a permit, or maybe if it wasn't allowed, I would have to get a variance or a special exception or conditional use or something like that?
Probably not a conditional use. If it does not meet the zoning parameters of the district, you would have to get a variance.
Okay, so that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, so I appreciate these comments, Roberta and everybody, but let's focus strictly on the outdoor dining and the height. We can talk about the Garrett Hill overlay all day long, and trust me, I would love to talk about that, but we're here specifically for two issues. So if we want to talk about a house that's somewhere and got a long driveway in Garrett Avenue, it may or may not relate. So, yeah, please.
This is my one last comment, because I want to clarify the fact that the zoning ordinance for the overlay district was not done by a group of residents. It was done by professional land zone designers and planners. So I think there was a lot of input from the community, but the actual plans were done by professionals. Thank you.
There were two comments.
Great. Yeah, so just to Two quick things. I'll address that. Thank you, Roberta. And if you have more questions, ask them. I want everyone to get a chance to speak. And as far as that this was a plan and it came up with professionals, but I have to be honest, I've lived in Garrett Hill since 2002, and I lived on Lowry's, I've lived on Rockingham. I was not very active when the Save Garrett Hill campaign was going around, but to this day, I have not seen that. I believe, as you know, it's done more harm than good, and I have been approached by a group of residents that want these changes, and that's why I'm here. So, all right. So we have. Okay, so someone made a comment here from Candace Craig. Candace, I'm going to unmute. I'm going to unmute you.
So I think this one was from Teresa.
Okay, that's from Teresa. Oh, no, sorry.
Yep.
Okay, so Teresa, are you there? Or how do we unmute? Can we ask to unmute?
Are you talking to me, Candace?
Yeah, that's fine, Candace. While we have you on, and we'll get you, Teresa, in a second. Candace, would you like to say something or make a comment?
It was hard for me to understand Roberta. I was trying to hear some of her questions, but I guess she's done now. But I also was wondering, I didn't hear the beginning of the meeting because I had to be somewhere else. So can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you fine. I think we're good from a AV perspective.
Okay. I just wanted to know, it says the south side of Garrett for the easing of the height restrictions. And is that the Conestoga side you're talking about?
Yes, from the trolley tracks to Conestoga, I've been referring to as the height restricted or the south side, so correct.
And is that on Garrett Avenue itself?
Strictly on
Specifically?
Garrett Avenue. It doesn't cross over to Williams. It ends at, at Antonella's or the Ale House, and I guess it would end from the trolley tracks. So,
Oh,
so
okay.
that little
Well,
stretch.
I live over there, and I guess I'm concerned about the easing of the height restrictions because we're the only family right there. The other homes that are right there are either they're rented to students. So I don't know who's asking for these, but the house on the end right next to us is rented for students. Across the street from us is a business that is a rental for a hair salon, and I don't know. And one other person is living there. And then, in other words, it's rental. And then down the other side are also, student rentals. So are these the student rentals that are wanting to have a higher height, I'm asking?
No. So I look at this in a broader picture. I think that when you have student housing, so take that house that was too tall. You remember the house that was too tall?
I very much remember the house that's
Terrific.
too tall. It's 2 doors from me.
Terrific. Okay. So no one knocks, I don't want to say no one, but typically the odds are that if you build a house or knock a house down or spend money to rehab a house, you're not going to do it for the sake of putting college kids in there that could most likely do what college kids do. So college kids, in my opinion, they're going to bring in more traffic and more cars. So there's two unrelated in a house, but when they have their boyfriends or girlfriends or someone, spending a couple days there extra, you could have 5-6 cars there. So I think in the long term, the more student rentals you get rid of, the better the parking situation will be. The other issue that I have is the maximum setbacks? Lot width. If you have the inability to purchase the twin next to you and convert it into one single house or knock it down and rebuild, you have two houses. And if you could make it where you only had one house with a bigger driveway and a bigger backyard, you would see a better parking situation. So it's not going to happen overnight. This is not going to fix the parking situation. Garrett Avenue, and some of these streets on Rockingham or in Garrett Hill, and I live on Rockingham, sometimes parking's tight. But I think if you take a longer-term approach to this and you look at what is causing the problems with traffic, we need to address them piece by piece. This is one of them, and then the maximum, help me out again, Kevin. It's been a long day. Lot width. I think getting rid of that, I think that would help as well. Does that answer your question, Candace? Or,
Well, a little bit, but I guess I sort of. I like you're saying that maybe the people that want to do this lifting of the height restriction, it may be because they want to tear down and maybe build something more, or maybe do a combinational type thing. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, maybe. If you have a 3 or 4 bedroom house as opposed to a 2-bedroom house, again, you can only put 2 college kids in per house. But if you have a house where you have 3 or 4 bedrooms, maybe you get a family there. So you have 2 cars, maybe 3 if there are kids in high school or college and they're home. But yeah, I think in general, parking should actually, it should be easier to park if you raise the heights, because I think that you'll have less student rentals. Now, if you look at that little, I don't know what they call it, those brick apartments behind, or that kind of are cornered to Antonella's, I mean, that's going to be there, and there are going to be college kids there probably for as long as I'm alive, unless they knock that down and rebuild it. So that's kind of what we're looking at. We're looking at college rentals like that, or the 2-tall house, which I think you could bring a family in. And I also think that when you bring families in, people drive slower on the street, and they're a little bit more respectful to the neighborhood. Am I helping you out by answering this, or is?
Yeah, sort of. I guess my concern was not so much with the parking. I guess my concern is more just with, walking down the street and not being able to see the sun because the houses are kind of, if you have that happening with a lot of homes, and you get the feel of, like you're, I don't know.
Sure, no, and
sort of a city feel, which,
so
I wouldn't want. I live right there on Garrett. So that would be my concern.
Sure. Can I just address that real quick? Because I know the house where you live, and so it's 5 feet. It's not going to make a material difference. That's number one. Number two, the homes can go as high as it's 35 feet everywhere else in Garrett Hill, if not everywhere else in Radnor. And I don't necessarily think that when I drive by, like, oh, wow, there's all these shadows cast on other homes. So not to say that, if you have a ranch and someone puts a 35-foot home above, that, yes, that could happen, but you have that right to increase your height as well, so you could get more sun in maybe a window or something. But for me, it's just the issue of things being equitable. It's going to hurt. It hurts the resale value of your house if you're restricted. So that's kind of
Right.
really the best thing that I can say is, this went through planning. Our planning voted unanimously for it, and I remember actually one of the members of the planning commission, she said 5 feet. It's only 5 feet. She lived in Garrett Hill too. I know where she lives. So So I just don't think that it's going to make any material difference. Now, if it was 42 feet, yeah, I think it's not fair.
Right.
I don't think anyone should have an advantage or a disadvantage. Keep it all at 35 feet and that's it. But you guys shouldn't be 30 feet and I shouldn't be 35. And the last thing I want to tell you, I don't live in your overlay district, is to tell you how tall your house should be and basically how to live. Just for me, for what I've been doing for 4 years, it just seems not fair and inequitable, and that's kind of what I'm trying to address here
Right.
and get feedback.
Right. I think the concern is not so much, I mean, I think everyone would definitely love more families to come in. So, that's great. If families are coming in there, that's great. I guess my concern is like, if these are going to be huge buildings that will not have families in them, I think that's more the concern for me anyway.
So I just, from what I see, I don't see it, the character of the street is the same on the south side as it is the north side. I don't see much difference there. I don't see that you're going to see this mass development going forward, but when it happens, it should be allowed to happen and everybody should be on a level playing field. But the 5 feet isn't going to make a difference when it comes to what type of house someone's going to build. I mean, they can build those houses like that guy Brasso did. Some people like them, some people don't. But again, things don't stay stagnant. Neighborhoods don't stay stagnant. If you stay stagnant and you don't grow, if you don't grow, you die. Period.
Right.
And
I
that's
agree
it.
with that.
I mean, and this is a critical point for both the businesses as well as the neighbor, the people that live there. I just want to, I mean, you don't have to build that tall, but to not have that opportunity, I just think is, like I said, I don't think it's fair.
Okay, great. Sounds fine to me. I agree with that part. So thank
Okay.
you very much.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to put, Lynn, you want to go? Is that a yes? Okay.
Hi,
Okay, you can speak? Okay, got it? Great.
Lynn Ellis, Lewis Lane, and Garrett Hill. I talked to the police yesterday, and they are opening Tony's Market again. They're putting a new facade on it.
Can
I
you speak
believe
up,
it's a
Lynn? I can barely hear you, I'm sorry.
Is that better? They can't.
Move a little closer, if you can move a little closer to the... All right, now try.
Okay,
Okay.
is that better?
Yep.
Okay. I talked to one of the DeFelice family yesterday, and they have a family member who's reopening Tony's Market. And to the left, there's a little tiny shop that used to be a bakery. I believe it's going to be a bakery again. Rita's All Seasons is doing gangbusters. I talked to the gentleman at the Bywood Seafood because I think the Garrett Hillians have been very supportive of the neighborhood shops to keep them going, like Antonelle's. And Bywood Seafood said he's never been busier. So I don't see where we have to make these changes with all this gloom and doom that Garrett Hill's ready to roll over and die. The other thing is my husband and I have always gone up to Garrett Hill to various businesses. We've never walked. It's the myth that everybody walks. Some people do, but a lot of people drive. So I think that's ridiculous. That's it. Bye.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. I'll say that a lot of people do walk. I live probably equal distance, maybe a little further than where you are. I walked there on my birthday. I skipped the board meeting. I actually walked there last night. It was my 19th wedding anniversary, and I walked there with my wife so I could walk home. I could have a drink or two and walk home. So we walked there. My wife walks to All Seasons with the wagon and my 6-year-old, and they get pumpkins and mums. So
Well,
Garrett
that's
Hill is
just
a
for
walking
fun.
community, yeah. Well, that's me, and that's what a lot of families, and that's who lives in Garrett Hill, families, and people that drive. I think we're at different points, Lynn, in our lives, where maybe it's easier for some people to walk and some people to drive.
Well, we've always driven for years, so
Okay.
thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there, yeah, Anna.
Hi, my name is Gene Mitchell. I work for Angie. And, just another comment on the driving, walking, riding a bicycle issue. There's a large portion of our patrons that actually take Uber and car services and things like that. And I think, that's a sign of the change, right? That wasn't there 13 years ago when we bought that restaurant. So things are definitely changing, and agree with all the points about stagnation is not necessarily a positive thing. But I'm going to touch on the height issue first. And what I'd like to say about that is that when we think about this, I would really say let's contemplate parity for everyone. Parity with other parts of this community, parity with the surrounding communities. This ordinance, from what I understand, is proposing to go to 35 feet from the top of the roof line. Just as an example, the surrounding communities, including Lower Merion, is 36 feet to the midpoint of the roof, which means you have another 3 feet up there. So I really feel that everyone's done a pretty good job on the compromise here in raising that height restriction. My only concern is that I think there should be a differentiation between a business and a residential building. And I think that that's not being taken into consideration here, because I don't see any rise in the roof lines for the businesses along Conestoga Road. So I think that really needs to be taken into consideration, if not now, maybe at some point in the future. Just a couple things that came up that I wanted to touch on. Someone had mentioned about a truck in the parking lot. It flips overhanging into the neighbor's yard. First of all, we own that house, so and that truck is from the neighbor across the street on Williams Road. And when COVID took place, he came to me and said, "Hey, look, I've got this big HVAC truck that I park in the street overnight, and now with COVID, more and more people are at home. I kind of feel bad taking up the spot, because literally it takes up 2.5 spots." He said, "Do you mind if I park in the parking lot?" And I said, "Absolutely not, because we've got no business anyway. Well, why not do that?" And I think, that's what we try to do for the community, and I think that's what we all should be trying to do, for the community. And just on the issue surrounding that overlay, and I know this is not the forum for that, but I appreciate you putting on this forum. I think it's really important. And I will say that, we've been there for 13 years, and when that overlay was going into place, we were not, as business owners, nor, as far as I know, were any other business owners engaged in that discussion at all. So I think this is a good process, and Angie and I are both very much in favor of it. In regards to the student parking and the housing and the height restriction in terms of increasing more students in the area, I don't know the answer to that. I do agree with the commissioner that I think that would be more residential than anything else. But I will say that although the ordinance is that I think each home can only have 2 cars per household, that's an absolute misnomer, because the girlfriends are staying over, they are having parties, there's multiple cars on the street. And I know that because my parking lots are full when I try to open up my businesses at 4 o'clock. And what have we done? Well, we knocked on the doors, we had a discussion with the students, we explained to them, look, it's okay if you park your cars in our parking lots when our businesses are closed, and to not clog up the streets for the other residents. But during business hours, which predominantly they're not there, you have to put the cars not in our parking lot. So again, I think that more interaction and discussion and dialogue with everyone, I think, is helpful, and a lot of these problems can get solved. Look, in regards to the outdoor dining issue, we're just asking for a means of survival. I can't even go into how bad this whole situation has been for us and members of the community. The restaurant community has been hit particularly hard. And we're just asking to be able to compete and and not at the detriment of the neighbors. You know, the outdoor dining has restrictions that protect the neighbors, and we will absolutely abide by this. And those regulations will survive whether it's our business or someone else's business. They're not going to dissipate because Angie is not involved day to day and we don't own that business. So, and that's the way the laws of the United States function, and I think that should be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Would anyone else? Andy?
Andrew Tillman, Garrett Hill Auto Service. It's 854 and 858 Conestoga Road, just in case somebody doesn't know that. I really find it very difficult to understand how our township cannot allow outdoor dining in our 2-block area when everybody else in the United States is embracing outdoor dining to keep the businesses going. It's just amazing that I'm even standing here tonight. This is something that should have been settled by the commissioners in a blink of an eye. Let it rip. I was standing outside. I walked outside of my shop across to Flippin' Bailey's, and there was patrons at the outdoor dining area, and I was standing out by the back of their parking lot, and I couldn't hear hardly anything. And they're talking about noise. For the few people that are really concerned about outdoor dining, there's so few of you, you don't even compare to the size of our neighborhood. And these neighbors don't even care, or they would have filled this property up right here with all of their concerns. Nobody even knows our zoning rules. They don't care about our zoning rules. They care about their zoning rules. We're fighting for our zoning rules in Garrett Hill neighborhood. And that's what I really find difficult to believe, that you're going to raise their height to 35 feet in the Garrett, Conestoga, or that's, what's that? Garrett Avenue neighborhood, or Garrett Avenue, what was the one in between? There's two there, and then you got Conestoga Road. And our Conestoga Road's gonna be 35 feet. We should be 42 feet, just like all the other commercial properties. That's not even fair. It's not fair at all. I fought for that when we first went through this, and I got blown back to 35 feet. Nobody builds a half story. They only rebuilt the locksmith building there because it had burned down, and they could go back to code, and they built the half story. That's the only reason why they did that. And that is the only property on the Conestoga Road section that has been sold since this overlay district has been put into effect. Not one property other than that along Conestoga Road has been sold. So all the owners are still there. And all the people that were sitting in these chairs that were fighting the overlay district at the very beginning because they were afraid Walmart was coming to town, you know what? They done sold their house and they're long gone. You two are the only people here fighting this. Well, I don't know why you don't embrace the outdoor dining, because you couldn't hear down your block even if they had a.
I'm not opposed to outside dining. I am concerned for the residents who live across the street.
What, across what street? There's no. I told you I was standing out there and it wasn't, no. If there was a problem with outdoor dining, it exists now on Williams Road on our side. They'd be right here making their comments. They'd be up on the computer. They'd be saying, you know what? No way. We don't want this. You know what? Our businesses have to survive. Our business has been put there before us, and we're here, and we're trying to keep our businesses going for the community in our area. We have no reason to change, but we need change. And this is one simple zoning change that we're trying to change in our overlay district, Heaven forbid, if we really want to make a small change on something else, we're in trouble. And I have a comment about the trailers and the trucks and all this stuff. You got to remember, that group that did our overlay district should have paid us back for the simple reason they embraced our small community with the overlay district like we were like Wayne. Like we had 10-foot wide sidewalks, the brick herringbone and trees and trash cans. We don't even have sidewalks on some of our businesses. And then they wanted to put the bulb outs in the intersection. You can't even get a tractor trailer around there. That would be impossible. So some of these zoning changes that even the commissioners that were in effect at the time blew it. They really blew it. They didn't know what they were looking at. And I think a lot of the steering committee, they really blew it. Now, granted, they changed it, but they changed it in such an effect that now our businesses are struggling because we can't get the property values now. You still have your property value down at your houses. Oh, come on, give me a break. Give me a break. I'm not even going to talk about real estate properties on the neighborhood side. Talk about my properties and the business districts. Our property values are not there. And it's very difficult for me to put my property on the block and sell it when they got to know they better read the fine print, because that fine print says you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, and you can't do that. And don't dare buy your neighbor and try and expand your property, because that's against our zoning district rules. I just have to, vent a little bit to let everybody know that, we pay taxes too. I cannot vote for my commissioners because I don't live in the township. But I pay taxes in the township. I should be able to vote for them. Maybe not the governor or the president twice, but who knows about that one. And you know what? If this gets passed, where we can have outdoor dining, I'm thinking about selling hot dogs and oil changes. Have a good night, fellas.
I don't know how I'm going to compete after that, Andy. There was one comment, this is from Theresa. She wrote, I was driving earlier but wanted to show support for Sean when he said the owners on Garrett Avenue should have the final say on zoning restrictions. I am one of those homeowners. Sorry. And then Candace wrote, though she spoke, I wanted to hear some of the questions that Roberta was asking. Please repeat her questions. Hard to hear. There will be a rebroadcast on that. And if you're still listening, Candace, just contact me and I can have you contact Roberta directly.
Teresa, I want to speak.
And Teresa, do you want to speak? Is that I don't know if she's...
Yeah. Hi, can you hear us? This is Brendan and Teresa.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay.
We do live on the Garrett Hill overlay that has been of so much debate. And we moved here 2 years ago, and one of the things we liked about the street was the walkability to everything. As far as the college housing, that feels like a scare tactic to me. I'm aware of one college house, and these are licensed. There's a process to get approval to rent to college students, and we do not have a lot. Okay, and if you walk down the street, you'd see half of it is driveway. So I don't agree with that. I don't agree with people who don't live on this street trying to put restrictions on our street. We're going to block out the sun. Give me a break. Who are these people? Okay, and don't come to my house. Do not come looking for me. And as far as the outdoor dining, we got to help our local businesses. I'm aware of many people that won't go into a restaurant if they don't have outdoor dining. Okay, there is a large demographic of people that think like that. All right, and just like, people, mind your own business. Seriously. And do not look for me.
Okay. Thank you. So there, Ian, if you can, just a couple more points. So I have been contacted from a lot of the neighbors, some living in the overlay, some not living in the overlay. All that have lived in the overlay are for it. I have emails here. I don't want to say the names on the Zoom meeting, but they're here, and I can submit this to the Board of Commissioners on the final vote on the 18th. There is one thing, Ian, if you can kind of zoom in. Ian, if you can zoom in on the table. Just, I'll start wrapping this up. Okay. Oh, yeah, absolutely, Angie. Okay. So, there we go. Okay. So this was a very unscientific Facebook poll, but I knew most of the 41 votes for it, and I knew the 3 votes against it. It's unscientific, it says, but I did put a post on a local social media Facebook page, which I am the admin for, and it said, "Are you in favor of limited outdoor commercial dining and easing height restrictions 5 feet for 19 homes on Garrett Avenue, so all houses in Garrett Hill are allowed to be a maximum 35 feet?" So it was 41 yes and 3 no. Out of those 3 votes that voted no, none of them lived in the restricted part of Garrett Hill. One person lived in Garrett Hill, but probably a good quarter mile from the actual, from where the height restriction or the outdoor dining is. So I don't think it really had too much effect on them. But I just want to get to the point that the majority of these residents, 41 to 3, again, unscientific, but if you go to the page, you may know a bunch of these people who voted. They're for it. That's overwhelming. Same thing with the emails that I got. The numbers are probably the same, 90, 95% for it, maybe 3 or 4% of the residents against it. But all the residents that live in that restricted area or live within 500-600 feet from the corner of Garrett Avenue and Conestoga, they all seem to be for it. So that's kind of the trend that I'm seeing. But it's 7:23, so we've been here for about an hour and a half. I would like to kind of wrap this thing up. Angie, if you would like to speak, yep.
I'm sorry. I know everyone's been here a long time, and I'll be quick. Andy, I'm voting for you for president. Rocked it. Angie Mitchell. Jean's my employee right there, like he said. We own Flippin' Bailey's and Garrett Hill Ale House. Many of you have heard my speeches and my comments before. Sean, thank you for having us. Kevin, thank you for supporting us. I don't want to repeat everything that everybody said. You guys know where we stand. This is necessary for improvement, for continued business. We need to be able to compete. One thing I want to make sure I get out there, my husband and I are all the time. I mean, he's a great runner. He runs every single day. He goes by the restaurants on his run. He picks up trash. He writes down things that are a problem, and we fix them every single day. We do what we have to do, and we often get complaints about things that are in the environment and the community, and we address every one of them. And one came up this week, and it actually hurt my heart. Somebody came by our restaurants and took photos and submitted them to the township for complaints about our outside dining and how this could deteriorate. I took it very sensitive because I care about that very much. I send people around our community, and when I analyzed every single photo, they were cans, they were bottles, they were paper plates, they were Solo red cups, none of which we provide or sell in our restaurant. I don't care about it. What I care about is that nobody else is picking these things up like we are and putting them in the trash. Instead, they're pointing fingers. We're a community. We have to work together. And one of the pictures I'm super sensitive about was a paper plate, which we don't sell. And the fact is, the picture got sent to the township. I am the one who picked that paper plate up when I was delivering restaurant supplies to our restaurant on a busy day, picked the plate up and put it in the trash. But the problem is somebody in the community thought it was more important to take the photo and send it to the township than to pick it up and throw it away. I'm embarrassed when I live in a community that doesn't help each other out. I am asking for the community to help us out. We have to work together. The height, I'm going to leave that to everyone else because I'm indifferent on how to cooperate with that, but I am very sensitive on things that can either kill my business or help my business. And the township has the authority. We've been reasonable with our request. I'm a little disappointed. We're the only business here fighting for this. There are other businesses. It doesn't impact them like we do, like we will be impacted. And it does kind of bother me that they're going to be blanketed into the approval. I do think there should be an approval process, something to say, okay, bring your plans. I have spent hours drawing up drawings, trying to get renderings, sending in submittals of the type of furniture I'm going to put in, talking about what kind of plants that are going to attract the bees. These are all things that I care about because I don't want to sit next to trash. I don't want to sit next to bees, but you have to think about that. And I want to make sure if it is developed and approved, other businesses are going to be held to the same scrutiny, and they're going to have to send in plans, and they're going to have to send in diagrams and renderings of their furniture because it all takes time. Anyway.
Can I just jump in before Kevin gets the floor? So Angie, I agree completely, and that's why we need to do this now and not wait 2 years. You're either going to invest outside and buy high-quality furniture, but you can't invest in furniture to get you done 2 years and then have to reinvest again. You can't buy things twice. So that's important, and that's why the sooner that this gets done, the better. And then as far as Kevin, you can talk about if it does have to go through design review.
Sure, absolutely.
So it does meet some taste of the neighborhood.
No, so this amendment will allow an establishment to have outdoor dining. Each establishment that chooses to have it has to go through a separate approval process through our design review board, similarly like you did the facade renovations. That same type of application for every establishment that wants to establish it. The location of where it's going to be, the type of furnishings, the plantings, the buffering, that's all part of the design and review board package that every establishment that wishes to take advantage of this amendment, should it be adopted, will have to go through. Okay, thanks.
Let me just, I do have to echo, if Brendan and Teresa are still on, do have to echo, because I was actually thinking the same thing, Brendan, about every rental property has to have approval and licenses. So I was thinking the same thing. The student housing, they go through the same approval, I know, because we have a rental, and we're not allowed to rent to students. These are things that the township governs. So I think that's not a problem in Garrett Hill, as long as the township pays attention to the licenses that are out there.
It's a bunch of families. It's a bunch of families that live here, and a bunch of people who don't want to mind their own business.
Absolutely. I mean, I can just keep going on, but we do care about the balance between businesses and residences, even student housing. Silly story, but we do live across the street. We have the business across the street from a student housing, and we happen to be there. My husband got off shift. He was washing dishes for me in the kitchen, and at Flippin' Bailey's, and we were sitting outside in our approved temporary outside dining area, and we see some students carry a couch across the street, and they dump it in our dumpster at the Garrett Hill Ale House. And, he goes over there and says, what are you doing? You can't, I'm going to have to pay to have that hauled off. we got to, what are you going to do? And they said, I'm really sorry. This is a community. I forgot about that. Let me go get the sofa out of your dumpster. And they did. They walked across the street, which he actually helped them get it out of the dumpster, and they took it across the street. But this is what a community does. It's a balance. We are student housing, we are residences, we are businesses, but we're all in the same boat together. I just hope we all can find a way to balance and help each other out.
John, do you want to come up? Okay.
I'll be really brief. As far as outdoor dining, I say, hey, as long as there's no public drunkenness or whatever, that's fine with me. As far as height restrictions, I never understood why that block between the trolley tracks and Conestoga Road had 30 feet. Everywhere else in the township has 35. To me, it's about highest and best use. I mean, why, if somebody wants to knock the house down and build 35 feet, I think that would be fine. I mean, if Brasso's place is any indication, that place is gorgeous. That's the most beautiful thing I've seen on, in this part of the world in ages. It was 5 feet too high and this and that and whatever. They figured it out. But when you drive by, it's gorgeous. Am I wrong? That's gorgeous, right? And in 20 years, 25 years, that's going to be the trend. We're not going to be stuck with these 1925, little bitty houses from before the Depression. So highest and best use says 35 feet. I say make it uniform. Why should they be impacted negatively because they can't build a house or have as much square footage as somebody across the street or across the way? And that's all I.
I'll agree with you. As much as I love these charming little homes that are 800 or 1,200 square feet, that's kind of a thing of the past, unfortunately, in Radnor Township. When Brasso built that house too tall, he shouldn't have done it. I get it, but I was against taking the dormers off and making something that's nice look not as nice. It's just cutting your nose off to spite your face. That was pretty much my assertion the whole time. I think John can probably agree with that. But other than that, I just kind of want to wrap it up. I do want to thank everybody that was on Zoom. Thank everybody here. I want to thank our staff as well. And anyone that has any more questions, feel free to reach out to me. It's sfarhi@gmail.com, or my phone number is 610-574-2040. Feel free to reach out. But I heard a lot of sides today, and I think it's great. This is great. My personal feeling is that nothing that I have heard from me has changed my mind, and I think that this is still the right course moving forward. So the vote will be October 18th. And for those that weren't able to make it here, if you want to speak, feel free to come speak at a public comment on the 18th. And we also have a meeting tomorrow night. You can come, and it's a budget meeting, but you can speak your mind there as well. So with that said, any more questions or comments? Perfect. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Have a good night.